The rain came down in sheets, soaking through Simone's silk blouse as she stood on the circular driveway watching security guards toss her belongings into cardboard boxes. Designer clothes landed in puddles. Photo albums bounced across wet concrete. A jewelry box spilled open, scattering pearls like tears across the black asphalt. "Please, you have to let me explain," Simone called out, but the guards ignored her. They had their orders. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of what used to be her home, she could see them. Trevor, her husband of 8 years, stood in the living room with his arm around Amber, the 26-year-old marketing associate from his company. They held champagne glasses, laughing. The chandelier sparkled above them. The fireplace glowed warm and inviting. Everything Simone had helped build, helped pay for, helped maintain. "Mrs. Grant, you need to leave the property," the head security guard said. His voice wasn't cruel, but it was firm. "Mr. Grant has provided you with this list of belongings. Everything else remains with the house." Simone took the paper with shaking hands. Her wedding ring caught the porch light, the diamond suddenly feeling heavy and meaningless. 8 years of marriage reduced to 2 pages of bullet points. 3 suitcases of clothes. Personal toiletries. Her laptop. Nothing else. "The cars?" she asked, knowing the answer. "Registered to Mr. Grant." "The bank accounts?" "Frozen pending divorce proceedings." The front door opened and Trevor stepped out, careful to stay under the covered porch, away from the rain that drenched his soon-to-be ex-wife. He looked different tonight. Harder. Colder. Like a stranger wearing her husband's face. "Simone, don't make this difficult," he said. His voice carried that smooth, practiced tone he used in business negotiations. "You'll get a fair settlement. My lawyers will contact your lawyers." "I don't have lawyers," Simone said. Her voice sounded small to her own ears, but she forced herself to stand straight to meet his eyes. "Trevor, we can talk about this. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Fix it? Simone, there's nothing to fix. I've moved on. You should too." Amber appeared behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. She was beautiful in that easy, careless way of someone who had never struggled. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves. Her skin glowed with youth and expensive skincare. She smiled at Simone, and it wasn't cruel or triumphant. It was worse. It was pity. "Trevor just closed a $500 million deal," Amber said. "We're celebrating. You understand, don't you? It's time for everyone to move forward. $500 million. The biotech deal Trevor had been working on for 3 years. The deal he'd talked about endlessly at dinner, keeping Simone up late to practice his presentations, borrowing her medical textbooks when he needed to understand the science. The deal he said would change their lives. He wasn't wrong about that. "That deal," Simone started, then stopped. Something held her back. Some instinct told her not to reveal what she knew. "Not yet." "What about it?" Trevor asked impatiently. He glanced at his watch, the Rolex she'd given him for their 5th anniversary. "Look, the deal closed today. I'm a very wealthy man now, Simone. I'll make sure you're taken care of in the divorce. But this marriage is over. It's been over for a long time. We both know it." Did they? Simone thought back over the past year. Trevor working late. Trevor traveling for business. Trevor distracted at dinner, on his phone, always on his phone. She thought he was stressed about work. She tried to support him, to give him space, to be understanding. She'd been understanding herself right out of her own home. "Sign the papers my lawyer sends," Trevor continued. "Don't fight this. You'll only embarrass yourself and waste money on legal fees you can't afford. I'm offering you a clean break and enough money to start over. Take it." Behind him, through the window, Simone could see more people arriving. Trevor's business partners. His friends from the country club. A celebration party, planned and executed while she'd been at her office across town, completely unaware that her marriage was ending tonight. The security guard touched her elbow gently. "Ma'am, I've called you a car service. It'll be here in 5 minutes." Simone nodded. She pulled off her wedding ring, feeling it slide over her knuckle, leaving a pale band of skin that had never seen sun. She held it out to Trevor. "Keep it," he said, waving it away. "Sell it if you want. Consider it a parting gift." She let the ring fall. It bounced once on the wet stone, rolled, and disappeared into the darkness of the garden. Neither Trevor nor Amber moved to retrieve it. They'd already turned away, heading back inside to their party. The guard helped Simone load her suitcases into the black town car when it arrived. As the driver pulled away, she looked back one last time at the house. The windows glowed with light and laughter. Music drifted out into the rainy night. Someone popped another bottle of champagne. Simone turned away and opened her purse. Inside, tucked into a hidden pocket, was a small USB drive. On it, copies of every document related to Trevor's biotech deal. Every contract, every regulatory filing, every approval document. Including the ones signed by Drive S. Winters. Trevor didn't know Drive S. Winters. He'd never asked about Simone's work, never paid attention to her career, never noticed that she'd kept her maiden name professionally. He didn't know that the regulatory approvals his deal depended on had been signed by his wife. The wife he'd just thrown out in the rain. Simone plugged in her phone and opened her contacts. She scrolled past Trevor's number, past their coupled friends, past everyone who would take his side or tell her to forgive him. She stopped at a name she hadn't called in 5 years. Patricia Hughes. Attorney at law. The phone rang twice before a crisp voice answered. Patricia Hughes speaking. Patricia, it's Simone Winters. We went to graduate school together. I need a lawyer. A very good lawyer. Simone? I remember you. What happened? Simone watched the mansion disappear in the rearview mirror. My husband just ended our marriage. He thinks he closed a $500 million deal today. Thinks? He has no idea I'm the one who signed the regulatory approvals that made his deal possible. And he just kicked me out of our house without even checking. There was a pause. Then Patricia's voice came back, sharp and interested. Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. As the car drove through the rain-soaked streets, Simone began to talk. She told Patricia about the research, about maintaining her maiden name professionally, about signing documents as Dr. Winters that Trevor had never connected to his wife. She told her about the USB drive, about the copies she'd made, about the safety measures she'd taken without really knowing why. Maybe some part of her had always known this day would come. Where are you going tonight? Patricia asked. I don't know. A hotel, I guess. Come to my office first. I'll order dinner. We have work to do. Simone gave the driver the new address. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched the city lights blur and shift. Behind her, Trevor was celebrating. He'd thrown her away like trash, confident in his victory, certain of his future. He had no idea what was coming. The car pulled up to a sleek glass building in the financial district. Simone gathered her suitcases, paid the driver with the emergency credit card she'd kept in her maiden name, and walked into the lobby. Her reflection in the polished doors showed a woman in a soaked blouse, her hair plastered to her skull, mascara running down her cheeks. She looked destroyed. She smiled. Tomorrow she would show Trevor what destroyed really meant. The hotel room was small but clean. Simone sat at the desk, still in her damp clothes, with her laptop open and the USB drive plugged in. The meeting with Patricia had gone until midnight. Now, at 2 a.m, Simone was reading through every file, reliving the past 3 years of her life. It was all here. Every email, every document, every lie. She opened a folder labeled, Grant Biotech Regulatory. Inside were dozens of PDF files. Official government forms. Research approval documents. Clinical trial authorizations. Each one required a signature from a qualified medical researcher with specific credentials. Each one was signed by Dr. Simone Winters, Ph.D. in biomedical engineering, certified by 3 separate regulatory boards. Simone clicked through them slowly, remembering. Trevor had come to her 2 years ago with a problem. His biotech startup needed regulatory approval for a new medical device. The process was complicated, requiring someone with medical research credentials to vouch for the safety protocols and methodology. Can you help me? He'd asked over dinner one night. Just sign off on some paperwork? It's all legitimate, I just need someone with the right credentials. Simone had reviewed the materials carefully. The device was sound. The research was good. She'd signed the initial documents, using her professional name and credentials. Then Trevor had come back with more documents. And more. Each time he presented it as a simple favor. A signature here and approval there. Nothing complicated. He needed her expertise, he said. He valued her education, he said. She'd believed him. But now, looking at the files with clear eyes, Simone saw the pattern. She wasn't just helping. She was the foundation. Without her signatures, without her credentials, without her professional reputation, Trevor's entire deal collapsed. The biotech company was developing implantable devices for cardiac monitoring. Every regulatory agency required proof that qualified medical researchers had approved the safety protocols. Trevor's background was in business and marketing. He had no medical credentials. His partner was a software engineer. Neither of them could legally sign the regulatory paperwork. Simone could. She'd done it because he was her husband. Because he'd asked. because she thought they were building a future together. She opened another folder, this one labeled Personal. Her hands hesitated over the keyboard. Did she really want to know? Yes. She needed to see it all. The first file was an email dated 6 months ago. From Trevor to Amber. Can't wait to finalize the deal and finally be free. Once the money hits, I'm done playing happy husband. She has no idea what's coming. Simone's breath caught. 6 months. He'd been planning this for 6 months. She scrolled through more emails. Trevor and Amber discussing wedding venues. Trevor and his lawyer discussing divorce strategy. Trevor and his accountant discussing how to hide assets before filing. Make sure everything's in my name only, Trevor had written. The house, the cars, the investment accounts. I want her to have as little leverage as possible. Once the deal closes, I'll file. By the time she knows what's happening, she'll have no choice but to accept whatever I offer. Simone sat back in her chair. The hotel room felt very quiet. Outside, she could hear traffic, the distant wail of a siren, the hum of the air conditioning. Inside, there was just the glow of her laptop screen and the steady beating of her heart. She wasn't crying. She'd cried in Patricia's office, cried in the car, cried in the hotel lobby when she checked in under her maiden name. Now there were no tears left. Just clarity. Trevor had used her. He'd married her because she was smart, educated, and had valuable credentials. He'd kept her around until her usefulness peaked. Then he'd thrown her away, confident that she knew nothing about business or law or finance. He was wrong about that too. Simone had grown up watching her mother build a small restaurant into a successful chain. She'd put herself through graduate school by managing research grants and budgets. She wasn't a lawyer or a business executive, but she understood numbers. She understood contracts. And she understood leverage. She opened a new document and started typing. First, a timeline of every signature, every approval, every document she'd signed. Second, a list of every credential and certification she held. Third, a summary of Trevor's company structure and the deal specifics. The $500 million deal was structured as an acquisition. A large medical device corporation was buying Trevor's startup for $500 million, paid out over 3 years contingent on maintaining regulatory approvals and hitting development milestones. The regulatory approvals signed by Drive S. Winters. Simone pulled up the purchase agreement. She'd only seen it once before, when Trevor had asked her to read through the technical specifications to make sure they matched his company's capabilities. She'd done it thinking she was helping. Now she read the legal clauses. Specifically, Section 12, Representations and Warranties. Seller represents that all regulatory approvals are valid, current, and obtained through proper channels. Any misrepresentation or loss of regulatory approval prior to closing shall constitute grounds for contract termination. Simone read it again. And again. The deal hadn't closed yet. It had been signed, announced, celebrated. But the actual transfer of money wouldn't happen for another 30 days. That was standard in acquisitions this size. Time for final due diligence, final confirmations, final paperwork. Time for regulatory agencies to verify that Drive S. Winters stood behind her approvals. Simone picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number for the Federal Medical Device Agency. She'd worked with them before on other projects. They knew her. Trusted her. She didn't call. Not yet. But she saved the number to her favorites. Then she opened her email and started a new message. To Dr. Helena Wu, Director of Regulatory Affairs, FMDA. Simone paused. What was she doing? Was she really going to destroy Trevor's deal? Take away the money he'd earned, even if he'd done it through using her? She thought about standing in the rain. About Amber's pitying smile. About Trevor's laugh when she'd asked to talk. About his lawyer's threat that she'd embarrass herself by fighting. She thought about 8 years of supporting his dreams while he ignored hers. 8 years of being invisible in her own marriage. 8 years of believing they were partners. Her fingers moved across the keyboard. Dear Dr. Wu, I am writing to request a review of regulatory approvals filed under my name for Grant Biotech Incorporated. Recent changes in my personal circumstances require me to verify that these approvals accurately reflect current conditions and that all documentation remains valid. Please advise on the proper procedure for such a review. Professional. Careful. Nothing accusatory. Just a simple request for clarification. Simone read it over 3 times before hitting send. The email whooshed away into the night. She closed her laptop and finally changed out of her wet clothes. In the bathroom mirror, she looked at herself. Really looked, maybe for the first time in years. She saw a 35-year-old woman with dark brown skin, natural black hair plastered to her head, and eyes that had cried too much tonight. She saw someone who'd let herself disappear into someone else's life. But she also saw Dr. Simone Winters, Ph.D., biomedical engineer, published researcher. Someone with skills and knowledge and value that had nothing to do with being Trevor Grant's wife. Tomorrow she would call Patricia. They would strategize, plan, prepare. But tonight, Simone let herself feel the full weight of what had happened and what she was about to do. Trevor thought he'd won. He thought the hard part was over, the prize secured, the future certain. He was about to learn the most important rule of biotech. Always read the fine print. Always verify your data. And never, ever underestimate the researcher whose name is on your approvals. Simone climbed into the hotel bed and fell asleep almost instantly. For the first time in months, she slept deeply and dreamlessly. When she woke 6 hours later, sunlight was streaming through the window and her phone was ringing. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. "Good morning," Simone answered. "I've been up all night reading the documents you sent me," Patricia said. "Simone, do you understand what you have here?" "I think so. You don't just have leverage. You have everything. Trevor's deal depends entirely on regulatory approvals that only you can validate. Without your cooperation, the whole thing falls apart." "I know. So what do you want to do?" Simone stood up and walked to the window. Below, the city was waking up. People heading to work, starting their days, chasing their dreams. Last night she'd been one of them. Just another person trying to survive. Today she was someone different. "I want to build my own company," Simone said. "Using my own credentials, my own research, my own name. Can you help me do that?" Patricia laughed, and it was a sound of pure delight. "Oh, Simone. I'm going to do more than help you. I'm going to make sure Trevor Grant regrets the day he ever took you for granted." Patricia's law office occupied the corner suite of a high-rise building with views of the entire city. Simone sat in a leather chair across from Patricia's massive desk, watching her former classmate review documents with the focused intensity of a surgeon. "This is remarkable," Patricia said, not for the first time. "How did Trevor not know about your professional work?" Simone shrugged, feeling the weight of years of invisibility. "He never asked. I kept my maiden name professionally because my publications and credentials were under that name. When we got married, I became Simone Grant socially, but at work I was always Dr. Winters. Trevor knew. I had a PhD, but he never cared about the details. To him, I was just his wife who happened to be smart enough to help with paperwork sometimes." Patricia shook her head in disbelief. "His loss. Your gain. Let's talk about what we're dealing with here." She spread several documents across the desk. Grant Biotech's acquisition by Medicorp is structured in phases. Phase 1, signing and announcement, which happened yesterday. Phase 2, due diligence period 30 days. Phase 3, regulatory confirmation. Phase 4, money transfer. "Where are we now?" Simone asked. "Phase 2. Which means Medicorp is currently verifying every claim Trevor made in his pitch. They'll be checking his company's assets, his patents, his technology, and most importantly, his regulatory standing." Patricia tapped one document in particular. "This is the regulatory approval for clinical trials. Signed by Drive S. Winters, dated 18 months ago. Without this approval, Grant Biotech never could have conducted the trials that prove their device works. Without proof the device works, there's no acquisition." "I remember signing that," Simone said quietly. "Trevor brought it to me on a Sunday. We were supposed to go to brunch, but he said it was urgent. I spent 4 hours reviewing the trial protocols to make sure they were safe and ethical. Then I signed." "Did he pay you?" "No. He said it was our future. Our company. Our success." Patricia's expression hardened. "Except your name isn't on the company. You're not listed as a co-founder, not mentioned in any of the corporate documents, not credited in any of the patents. He used your credentials but gave you nothing in return." Simone felt a familiar ache in her chest. "I trusted him. I thought we were building something together." "You were. He just made sure it was all his." Patricia pulled up something on her computer screen. "I did some digging this morning. Trevor's been living beyond his means for the past year. He took out personal loans against the expected acquisition payout. Big loans. He bought the new car, upgraded the house, and funded his lifestyle with Amber. If this deal falls apart, he doesn't just lose the money. He goes into debt." "How much debt?" $3 million. Simone blinked. "How is that possible?" "Banks love lending to people with guaranteed payouts. Trevor told them he had a $500 million deal closing. They gave him whatever he wanted. But those loans come due whether the deal closes or not. The implications settled over Simone like a weight. She could destroy Trevor financially. With a single phone call to the regulatory agency, she could raise enough questions to delay or derail the entire acquisition. "What are you thinking?" Patricia asked gently. "I'm thinking I don't want revenge," Simone said slowly. "I want justice. I want what I'm owed. I want to build something of my own, not just tear down what Trevor built on my back." Patricia smiled. "Then let's talk about your options. Option 1. You contact Trevor, tell him what you know, and negotiate a settlement. He pays you a substantial portion of the acquisition money in exchange for your continued support of the regulatory approvals. And Option 2? You start your own company. You file your own patents for the research you've been conducting independently. You establish yourself as Dr. Winters, separate from Trevor Grant entirely. Then, when the regulatory agency contacts you for verification, you tell them the truth. Your circumstances have changed and you need to review whether your previous approvals still stand. That would destroy his deal. Probably. But it would also establish you as an independent expert with valuable credentials and research. Which leads to Option 3. There's a third option? Patricia's smile widened. You do both. You start your own company while Trevor's deal is in due diligence. You file your patents, establish your business, and build your professional reputation. Then, when Trevor inevitably comes to you begging for help, you're not a desperate ex-wife. You're Dr. Simone Winters, CEO of your own biotech firm. You negotiate from strength, not weakness. Simone sat back in her chair, her mind racing. How long would it take to start a company? With your credentials? 2 weeks to file the paperwork. Another week to secure office space and basic equipment. A month to start building a team if you move fast. And the patents? I'll have my intellectual property attorney review your research tonight. If the work is yours and was done independently, we can file provisional patents within days. Simone pulled out her phone and opened her work files. I've been conducting research on next-generation biosensors for 3 years. It's related to cardiac monitoring but uses different technology than Trevor's company. I have lab notebooks, data files, and preliminary results. She sent the files to Patricia's email. Everything I did was on my own time, using university resources I paid for myself through teaching and grants. Trevor knew I had a lab space but he never visited. Never asked what I was working on. Patricia's phone chimed as the files arrived. Perfect. I'll get these to my IP attorney today. Now let's talk about what you need to start your company. Money, space, equipment, and people. Over the next 2 hours they mapped out a plan. Simone had savings in an account Trevor didn't know about, money she'd squirreled away from teaching fees and grant stipends. It wasn't much, but it was enough to rent a small office and buy basic equipment. For staff, Patricia suggested reaching out to graduate students and junior researchers who might want to work with an independent lab. You're not looking for employees yet, Patricia explained. You're looking for collaborators. People who'll work for equity and the chance to be part of something new. By noon they had a complete business plan. Winters Biotech would focus on developing advanced biosensors for real-time health monitoring. The technology overlapped with Trevor's company's focus but was different enough to avoid direct competition. When should I register the company? Simone asked. Today. Right now. Before Trevor has any idea what you're planning. They walked to the Secretary of State's office together. 3 hours and a stack of paperwork later, Winters Biotech officially existed. Simone held the certificate in her hands, reading her name at the top. Simone Winters, CEO and founder. She'd never felt more terrified or more alive. That evening, back at the hotel, Simone received her first email from the regulatory agency. Dear Dr. Winters, thank you for your inquiry regarding your approvals for Grant Biotech. We have scheduled a routine verification review for all signatures related to this company, standard procedure for acquisitions of this size. Someone from our office will contact you within the next 2 weeks to confirm the validity of your approvals. Please ensure we have your current contact information and institutional affiliation. Simone read the email 3 times. 2 weeks. She had 2 weeks before the regulatory agency would contact her directly. 2 weeks before Trevor would realize that Dr. Winters and his ex-wife were the same person. 2 weeks to build something strong enough to stand on its own. She opened her laptop and started making calls. First, to Dr. Rachel Bennett, a former classmate who specialized in materials engineering. Then to James Porter, a brilliant software developer she'd worked with on a research project 5 years ago. Then to several graduate students she taught, young and hungry and eager for opportunities. By midnight, she had commitments from 6 people to join her new company. Some would work part-time. Others would consult on specific problems. But all of them believed in her vision. All of them saw Dr. Winters as someone worth following. Simone fell asleep that night with her laptop still open, her phone full of messages, and her mind buzzing with possibilities. Somewhere across the city, Trevor was probably celebrating with Amber. Spending money that hadn't arrived yet. Planning a future that depended on approvals he didn't control. He'd thrown her out thinking she was powerless. In 2 weeks he'd learned just how wrong he'd been. The office space was tiny, just 3 rooms on the 2nd floor of a converted warehouse in the industrial district. But it had good light, decent plumbing, and rent Simone could actually afford. She signed a 6-month lease with money from her secret savings account and spent the next week turning empty rooms into a functional laboratory. "This is really happening," Rachel Bennett said, standing in the main room with her hands on her hips. She was a short woman with dark brown skin and natural hair pulled into a high puff. Her eyes swept over the empty space with the calculating gaze of someone already seeing what it could become. "It's really happening," Simone confirmed. They'd been classmates at MIT, both studying biomedical engineering, both determined to change the world. Rachel had gone into materials science while Simone had focused on device development. Now, 15 years later, they were standing in an empty room about to build something together. "Where do we start?" Rachel asked. "Equipment first. I made a list of essentials versus nice-to-haves." Simone pulled out her tablet and showed Rachel the spreadsheet. "We can get most of what we need used or on lease. I've already contacted suppliers." Over the next 5 days they transformed the empty space into a working lab. Benches along the walls. Basic microscopy equipment in one corner. Computer stations near the windows. A small meeting area with a whiteboard that quickly filled with equations and diagrams. James Porter arrived on day 3 with 2 graduate students in tow. James was a black man in his 40s, tall and lean with graying hair and quick, intelligent eyes. He'd been working at a tech startup that had recently folded, leaving him looking for his next challenge. "Simone Winters," he said, grinning when he saw her. "I heard you were starting something interesting." "Interesting is one word for it. I prefer revolutionary." James gestured to the students. "This is Michelle and Andrew. They're finishing their PhDs in computer science and looking for thesis projects. I told them you might have something for them." Michelle was a young African-American woman with bright eyes and nervous energy. Andrew was Asian-American, quiet but intensely focused. Both looked at Simone with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "What do you know about biosensors?" Simone asked. Michelle spoke first. "Current biosensors can monitor basic metrics like heart rate and blood oxygen. But they're limited by power consumption, data transmission, and accuracy. There's a huge gap between what the technology can theoretically do and what actually makes it to market." "And you want to close that gap?" Simone asked. "I want to blow it wide open," Michelle said. Simone hired them on the spot. By the end of the first week, Winters Biotech had a team of 8 people and a clear mission. Develop biosensors that could monitor multiple health metrics simultaneously with unprecedented accuracy and minimal power consumption. The technology would revolutionize patient care, especially for people with chronic conditions who needed constant monitoring. It was ambitious, maybe impossible, but that had never stopped Simone before. On day 8, Patricia called with news about the patents. "Your IP attorney friend is a miracle worker," Simone said, picking up immediately. "He says your research is solid and completely independent from Grant Biotech's work. You're clear to file provisional patents on 3 separate technologies. We'll have them submitted by Friday." 3 patents. Simone sat down hard on her office chair. The biosensor array, the power management system, and the data processing algorithm. Each one is valuable on its own. Together, they could be the foundation of something major. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. Not from sadness this time, but from relief. From validation. From the simple fact that her work, her research, her ideas had value separate from Trevor's company. "How much will the patents cost?" $20,000 for provisional filings. Another $50 if we pursue full patents. "But Simone, I think you should pursue them. These are good. Really good." $20,000. It would take most of Simone's remaining savings. But what choice did she have? The patents were her protection, her proof that this technology was hers. "Do it," she said. "File everything." That night, she worked late in the lab, running simulations on her new computer system. Michelle and Andrew had built a basic modeling program that predicted how different sensor configurations would perform under various conditions. The results were promising. Around 11 p.m. her phone rang. A known number. Simone almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Dr. Winters? A man's voice, professional and neutral. This is Daniel Chen from the Federal Medical Device Agency. I'm calling about your regulatory approvals for Grant Biotech. Simone's heart jumped into her throat. Yes. We're conducting routine verification for their pending acquisition. I have a few questions about the documents you signed 18 months ago. Do you have time to talk? Of course. First, can you confirm your current institutional affiliation? Our records show you at Memorial University, but I understand circumstances may have changed. Simone took a breath. I'm no longer affiliated with Memorial University. I've established my own research company, Winters Biotech. There was a pause. The sound of typing. I see. And in your capacity as an independent researcher, do you still stand behind the safety protocols and methodology you approved for Grant Biotech's clinical trials? This was it. The moment that would determine everything. Simone thought about Trevor throwing her out in the rain. About his laugh when she'd asked to talk. About 8 years of being invisible in her own marriage. But she also thought about her reputation. About ethics. About the fact that the research she'd approved had been legitimate, the trials safe, the results valid. Mr. Chin, the work I approved was sound at the time of my signature. However, I'm no longer in a position to verify ongoing compliance or current status. My original approvals were based on specific conditions and ongoing oversight. I'd recommend Grant Biotech provide updated documentation showing continued compliance with all protocols. More typing. I see. And if they can't provide that documentation? Then I can't verify that my original approvals remain valid under current conditions. Understood. Thank you for your candor, Dr. Winters. I'll note this in my report. Expect follow-up questions within the next week. The call ended. Simone set down her phone with shaking hands. She hadn't lied. She hadn't sabotaged Trevor's deal directly. She'd simply told the truth. Circumstances had changed and she couldn't vouch for something she had no way to verify. But the effect would be the same. The regulatory agency would flag Grant Biotech for additional review. They'd require updated documentation and verification. The acquisition timeline would be delayed while Medicorp and Grant Biotech scrambled to prove continued compliance. And Trevor would finally realize that Drivus Winters, the researcher whose name was on all his critical documents, was the wife he'd thrown away. Simone packed up her things and headed back to the hotel. Tomorrow she had meetings with potential investors, people Patricia had connected her with. Small players looking for the next big thing in biotech. None of them knew about her connection to Trevor or Grant Biotech. They only knew about Dr. Winters and her promising research. That's exactly how Simone wanted it. She was building something real now. Something that belonged to her. Whatever happened with Trevor's deal was between him and the regulatory agencies. Simone was focused on her own future. For the first time in years, she was excited about that future. Trevor Grant sat in his corner office at Grant Biotech headquarters, staring at an email that made no sense. Regulatory review required. Additional documentation requested. The email was from Medicorp's legal team. They'd received a notice from the Federal Medical Device Agency flagging Grant Biotech's approvals for review. Nothing serious, the email said. Just routine verification. But they needed Trevor to provide additional documentation showing continued compliance with the original trial protocols. No problem. Trevor pulled up his files and started gathering documents. Trial results, safety reports, compliance logs. Everything was in order. His company had done nothing wrong. Except when he tried to access the original approval documents signed by Drivus Winters, he discovered a problem. The digital signatures were valid, but the regulatory agency wanted direct confirmation from Dr. Winters herself. They wanted her to personally verify that the approvals remained current and accurate. Trevor stared at the name, Drivus Winters. He'd never met Dr. Winters. She'd been a consultant his CTO had hired 3 years ago to sign off on their regulatory paperwork. Someone with impressive credentials who'd reviewed their work and given them official approval. Trevor had paid her fee through the company and never thought about her again. Now Medicorp was insisting they get direct confirmation from her before the acquisition could proceed. Trevor called his CTO Brandon Weeks. I need contact information for Drivus Winters, the consultant who signed our regulatory documents. Winters. Brandon sounded confused. I don't think we have current contact info. That was years ago. She signed the documents through some university, right? Find her. Medicorp needs her to confirm the approvals or the deal's on hold. Trevor hung up and rubbed his temples. This was supposed to be the easy part. The deal was done, the money practically in the bank. He'd already started spending it. The new Porsche was being delivered next week. He'd put down a deposit on a beach house. Amber's engagement ring had cost $200,000. His phone buzzed with a text from Amber. Still at the office? Come home. I'm planning the honeymoon. Trevor smiled despite his stress. Throwing out Simone had been the best decision he'd ever made. Amber was everything his ex-wife wasn't. Fun, spontaneous, easy to please. She didn't question his business decisions or bore him with talk about research and academics. She just enjoyed the lifestyle his success provided. And once this minor paperwork issue was resolved, that lifestyle would be worth $500 million. 3 days later, Brandon still hadn't found Dr. Winters. It's like she disappeared, Brandon said, standing in Trevor's office looking uncomfortable. The university she was affiliated with says she's no longer there. Her old email bounces. I can't find any current contact information. Keep looking, Trevor snapped. She can't have vanished. Run a background check. Hire a private investigator if you have to. We need to find her now. Meanwhile, Medicorp was getting impatient. Their lawyers sent daily emails asking for updates on the regulatory situation. The acquisition deadline was approaching and they made it clear. No regulatory confirmation, no deal. Trevor's stress turned to panic. He'd borrowed millions against the acquisition payout. His creditors were already calling, asking when the money would arrive. He told them 30 days. That deadline was now 2 weeks away. What if we get someone else to sign off? Amber suggested one night over dinner. She was scrolling through wedding venues on her tablet, not really paying attention to Trevor's mounting panic. It has to be the same person who signed originally, Trevor explained for the third time. That's how regulatory approvals work. You can't just swap out the expert halfway through. Well, that seems stupid. Trevor wanted to snap at her but held back. None of this was Amber's fault. She didn't understand biotech or regulatory affairs. She was just trying to help. On day 10 of the search, Brandon rushed into Trevor's office with his laptop. I found something. Look at this. He turned the screen to show a news article from Medical Research Today. New biotech startup shows promise in biosensor development. The article featured a photo of a woman in a lab coat standing in front of equipment. The caption read, Dr. Simone Winters, founder and CEO of Winters Biotech, demonstrates her company's advanced monitoring technology. Trevor stared at the image. Something about the woman looked familiar. Dark brown skin, professional bearing, confident smile. Where had he seen her before? Then it hit him. The woman in the photo looked like Simone. His ex-wife, Simone. That's impossible, Trevor said. But even as he spoke, pieces started falling into place. Simone's maiden name had been Winters. She had a PhD in biomedical engineering. She'd helped him with paperwork before, signing off on technical documents. Is that your ex? Brandon asked, peering at the screen. Trevor grabbed his phone and searched, Dr. Simone Winters. Results flooded his screen. Academic publications. Conference presentations. A company website for Winters Biotech. And there, in every photo, every bio, every article, Simone. His ex-wife was Drivis Winters. The woman whose signature was on every critical regulatory document for his company. The woman he'd kicked out of their house 2 weeks ago. No, Trevor whispered. No, no, no. He pulled up the regulatory documents with shaking hands. There it was, Drivis Winters, PhD, biomedical engineering. Affiliated with Memorial University. The signatures were dated over an 18-month period, all during his marriage to Simone. How had he not known? How had he never made the connection? Because he'd never asked. Never paid attention. Never cared about Simone's career or credentials or professional life. She'd been his wife, not his colleague. He'd thought of her as supportive background, not as someone with her own expertise and value. We need to call her, Brandon said. Right now. Get her to confirm the approval so we can save this deal. Trevor dialed Simone's number with trembling fingers. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. He sent a text. Simone, it's Trevor. I need to talk to you about a business matter. Please call me back immediately. No response. He sent another text. This is urgent. About Dr. Winters and regulatory approvals. Please respond. Nothing. Trevor drove to the hotel where Simone had been staying, but the front desk told him she'd checked out a week ago. They wouldn't provide her new address. He tried her email, her social media accounts, every method of contact he could think of. Simone was ignoring him completely. That night, Medicorp sent a formal notice. Without regulatory confirmation within 7 days, they would invoke the termination clause in the acquisition agreement. The deal would be dead. Trevor sat in his home office, surrounded by expensive furniture he couldn't afford and decorations for a wedding that wouldn't happen without the acquisition money. Amber was asleep upstairs, dreaming of their future together. A future that depended entirely on the cooperation of the woman he'd humiliated and thrown away. He pulled up the article about Winters Biotech again and read it carefully this time. Simone had started her own company. She was conducting her own research. She was building her own career, completely independent of him. And somewhere in that article, buried in the description of her new company's focus, Trevor saw familiar language. Technology concepts he'd heard before. Research directions similar to his company's work. Simone wasn't just refusing to help him. She was competing with him. Trevor grabbed his phone and dialed his lawyer. I need you to look into Winters Biotech. Find out what they're working on, what patents they've filed, everything. I think my ex-wife is stealing my company's intellectual property. But even as he said it, Trevor felt a sick certainty in his stomach. Simone hadn't stolen anything. She'd built her own company using her own credentials and research. Research she'd probably been conducting for years while he ignored her. He'd taken her for granted, used her expertise without acknowledgement, and thrown her away when he thought he didn't need her anymore. Now she held all the cards and Trevor had no idea how to get them back. Simone was in her lab, reviewing sensor calibration data with Michelle, when her phone started buzzing incessantly. She glanced at the screen and saw Trevor's name flashing over and over. 12 calls. 20 texts. 3 voicemails. Everything okay? Michelle asked, noticing Simone's expression. Just someone from my past trying to reconnect, Simone said carefully. Nothing I need to deal with right now. She turned off her phone and returned to her work. Whatever Trevor wanted could wait. She had actual important things to do. The provisional patents had been filed. Winters Biotech was operational. And this morning she'd received interest from 2 potential investors who wanted to hear her pitch. Small firms, nothing like the massive corporations courting Trevor's company, but they represented real money and real belief in her vision. That afternoon, Simone met with Patricia at a coffee shop downtown. Trevor's been trying to reach you, Patricia said. It wasn't a question. I know. He's figured out you're Dr. Winters. I assumed he would eventually. Patricia slid a folder across the table. His lawyer sent this to my office this morning. Cease and desist letter claiming you're violating non-disclosure agreements and potentially stealing intellectual property. Simone opened the folder and read the legal document. It was full of threatening language but light on actual claims. This is ridiculous. I never signed any NDA. And all my research is independent work I conducted on my own time using my own resources. I know. His lawyer knows. But Trevor's desperate. The regulatory review is holding up his acquisition, and without your cooperation, it's going to fall apart. Good. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Just good? Not interested in negotiating? He's going to come to you with an offer, Simone. Probably a substantial one. He'll offer you money to confirm the regulatory approvals. I don't want his money. What do you want? Simone thought about the question. What did she want? Revenge? Justice? To see Trevor suffer the way she'd suffered? No, that wasn't it. I want him to leave me alone, she said finally. I want to build my company without him interfering. I want my research and my reputation to be mine, not tied to his success or failure. Then we need to establish clear boundaries. Your work is yours. His work is his. The regulatory approvals you signed were legitimate at the time, but you're not obligated to provide ongoing support for a company you're no longer affiliated with. Can we send that in writing? Already drafted. Patricia pulled out another document. This letter states clearly, you fulfilled your professional obligations when you signed the original documents. Any ongoing compliance or verification is Grant Biotech's responsibility, not yours. You are not obligated to provide additional support, testimony, or cooperation beyond what you've already given. Simone signed the letter. Patricia would send it to Trevor's lawyer tomorrow. But Trevor didn't wait for legal correspondence. That evening he showed up at Simone's lab. She was alone, working late on data analysis, when she heard the main door open. Security was minimal in the building, just a keypad lock that anyone could follow her through. She looked up to see Trevor standing in the doorway. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes red-rimmed. This wasn't the confident businessman who'd thrown her out 2 weeks ago. This was someone desperate. "Simone," he said. "Please. I need to talk to you." "How did you find me?" "Your company's address is public record. Please just give me 5 minutes." Simone saved her work and closed her laptop. She didn't stand up or invite him further into the space. "Say what you came to say." Trevor moved closer, then seemed to think better of it and stopped several feet away. "I didn't know about Dr. Winters being you. I swear I didn't make the connection." "I know. You know? You never asked about my work. Never visited my lab. Never cared about my career. Why would you connect Dr. Winters to your wife? To you, I was just Simone who signed some papers when you asked." Trevor flinched. "That's not fair. I supported your education. I supported your career. You tolerated it. There's a difference." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Simone recognized from years of marriage. He always did that when stressed. It used to make her want to comfort him. Now she felt nothing. "Look," Trevor said, "I know I messed up. The way I handled things with Amber, the divorce, all of it. I was wrong. But my company, my deal, this is 3 years of work, Simone. Hundreds of people's jobs depend on this acquisition going through. Then you should have thought about that before you threw away the person whose credentials made it all possible. I'm trying to make it right. Name your price. I'll give you whatever you want. Money, equity, credit on the patents. Just please confirm the regulatory approval so the acquisition can proceed." Simone stood up. She was shorter than Trevor, but in this moment she felt taller, stronger, more sure of herself than she'd ever been in their marriage. "I already confirmed what I could confirm. I told the regulatory agency that the work was sound when I signed it. But I also told them the truth. I can't verify ongoing compliance for a company I'm not affiliated with. That's not my job anymore. Simone, please. My name is Dr. Winters, and I have my own company to build. You need to leave." Trevor's desperation turned to anger. "This is petty revenge. You're sabotaging my deal because I left you." "I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm protecting my professional reputation. There's a difference. The regulatory agency won't question the approvals if you just tell them everything's fine. But I don't know if everything's fine. I haven't been involved with your company for 2 weeks. I have no idea if you're still in compliance with the protocols I approved. I'd be lying to say otherwise. Then come back. Review the current work. I'll pay you as a consultant." "No." The word hung in the air between them. Simple. Final. Trevor stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You really don't care if my company fails. Your company's success or failure has nothing to do with me. Just like my career had nothing to do with you. We're separate people leading separate lives. That's what you wanted when you kicked me out, remember?" Trevor's phone rang. He glanced at it and his face went pale. "It's Medicorp's CEO. I have to take this. Then take it somewhere else." He started to argue, then thought better of it. "This isn't over, Simone. My lawyers will fight this. Good luck with that." Trevor left. Simone stood in her lab for a long moment, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then she went back to her computer and pulled up her data. Her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline from the confrontation. But underneath the nerves was something else. A sense of calm certainty. She'd stood her ground. She'd told the truth. She hadn't been cruel or vindictive, just honest about her professional obligations and personal boundaries. The next morning, Patricia called with news. Medicorp just withdrew their offer. They sent a formal letter terminating the acquisition agreement. Grant Biotech's stock price crashed this morning. Trevor's company is in free fall. Simone sat down at her desk. What happens now? Trevor's creditors will start calling in his loans. He'll have to sell assets to cover his debts. The house, the cars, everything. His company might survive if they can find new investors, but it's going to be a long, difficult road. And Amber? Patricia laughed. According to my sources, she moved out last night. Apparently, being engaged to a multimillionaire is more appealing than being engaged to someone in debt. Simone felt a complex mix of emotions. Not satisfaction exactly, but something close. Not revenge, but justice. Trevor had built his empire on her credentials without giving her credit. Now that empire was crumbling, and he was facing the same uncertainty she'd felt standing in the rain 2 weeks ago. There's something else, Patricia said. I got a call this morning from Vitatech Corporation. They're interested in your company. Vitatech, the pharmaceutical giant. They've been watching emerging biotech firms. Your patents caught their attention. They want to meet with you about a potential partnership. Simone's heart jumped. Vitatech was one of the biggest companies in the industry. A partnership with them would give Winters Biotech credibility, resources, and opportunities she couldn't even imagine. When do they want to meet? Tomorrow. Can you put together a presentation by then? Simone looked around her small lab. At the equipment she'd scraped together. At the team she'd built from scratch. At the research that was finally, truly hers. Yes, she said. I can be ready. She hung up and started planning. Not just for tomorrow's meeting, but for the future she was building. A future that had nothing to do with Trevor Grant or revenge or making anyone pay. A future that was entirely her own. The Vitatech Corporation headquarters occupied an entire city block, all gleaming glass and modern architecture. Simone stood in the lobby wearing her best suit, carrying a laptop with her presentation loaded and ready. Beside her, Rachel and James provided moral support. You've got this, Rachel said quietly. Your research is solid. Your pitch is strong. Just be yourself. Confident, brilliant, and not at all terrified, James added with a grin. A woman in an impeccable navy pantsuit approached them. Dr. Winters? I'm Jennifer Martinez, VP of Research and Development. Please follow me. They rode the elevator to the 20th floor in silence. Simone's stomach churned with nerves. This was different from her meeting with small investors. Vitatech was a major player. If they believed in her company, everything would change. The conference room overlooked the city, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a table that could seat 20 people. But only 5 seats were occupied. Jennifer Martinez, 2 other executives. Simone didn't recognize, and to her surprise, Dr. Helena Wu from the Federal Medical Device Agency. Dr. Wu, Simone said, shaking her hand. I didn't expect to see you here. I'm consulting with Vitatech on their regulatory strategy, Dr. Wu explained. When your name came up in connection with Grant Biotech's situation, I mentioned your excellent reputation to Jennifer. Your work has always been thorough and ethical. Simone felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Dr. Wu's presence meant this wasn't just about her technology. It was about her professional integrity. Shall we begin? Jennifer asked, gesturing to the presentation screen. Simone plugged in her laptop and launched her slides. For the next 40 minutes she walked them through her research. The biosensor technology. The power management innovations. The data processing algorithms. She showed preliminary results, explained potential applications, and outlined her vision for the future of personal health monitoring. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then Jennifer smiled. Dr. Winters, that was impressive. Your technology solves problems our research division has been struggling with for years. The power efficiency alone could revolutionize continuous monitoring devices. Thank you, Simone said, trying to keep her voice steady. We'd like to propose a partnership, Jennifer continued. Vitatech would provide funding, laboratory resources, and access to our clinical trial network. In exchange, we'd want exclusive licensing rights to any technology developed through the partnership, with Winters Biotech retaining ownership of the underlying patents. One of the other executives, an older man with silver hair, leaned forward. We're prepared to offer an initial investment of $300 million. $50 million upfront, with the remainder distributed over 3 years based on development milestones. Simone felt the room spin. $300 million. More than half what Trevor's entire company was being acquired for. And this was just a partnership, not a buyout. She'd still own her company, still control her research. I'd need to review the terms with my attorney, Simone said carefully. Of course. We'll have our legal team send over the contract today. But Dr. Winters, I want to be clear. We're not just investing in your technology. We're investing in you. Your reputation, your expertise, your vision. Vitatech has been looking for innovative researchers to partner with, and you're exactly the kind of leader we want to work with. After the meeting, Simone walked out of the building in a daze. Rachel and James flanked her, both grinning like they'd won the lottery. $300 million, Rachel said. Simone, do you understand what this means? It means we can hire a full team, rent a proper facility, run comprehensive trials. It means everything we wanted to do but couldn't afford, we can actually do now. James pulled out his phone. I'm texting Michelle and Andrew right now. They're going to lose their minds. But Simone barely heard him. She was thinking about 3 weeks ago, standing in the rain watching Trevor celebrate his success. 3 weeks ago she'd had nothing but a USB drive and Patricia's phone number. Now she had her own company, her own research, and a $300 million partnership offer from one of the biggest corporations in her industry. The drive back to her lab was a blur. When she walked in, her small team was already celebrating, Michelle and Andrew having spread the word. Someone had bought cheap champagne. Someone else had ordered pizza. The little lab was full of noise and laughter and hope. Patricia called while Simone was reviewing the partnership terms. "I heard from Vitatech's legal team," Patricia said. "These terms are generous, Simone. Very generous. They're offering you more than a fair deal." "What's the catch?" "No catch. They genuinely believe in your research. And there's one more thing, they want you on their board of directors. It's a paid position that would give you influence over the company's research direction across all divisions." Simone sat down heavily. "Why me? I just started my company 3 weeks ago." "Because you're brilliant, ethical, and you have exactly the kind of innovative thinking they need. Also, Dr. Wu spoke very highly of you. That carries weight." That evening, alone in her small apartment, she'd finally moved out of the hotel. Simone allowed herself to feel the full weight of what was happening. She'd gone from homeless and penniless to CEO of a promising startup with a major corporate partnership. In 3 weeks. Her phone buzzed. Trevor's name appeared on the screen. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of her. "What do you want?" she asked. "I heard about your Vitatech deal." Trevor's voice was flat, defeated. "Congratulations." Simone said nothing. "Look, I know I don't have any right to ask, but I'm in trouble. The creditors are seizing my assets. I'm going to lose everything. I just need a small loan to—" "No. Simone, please. I'm begging you. Just enough to keep the house. Amber left me. My company's falling apart. I have nowhere else to turn." Simone thought about all the time she'd supported Trevor. All the late nights helping with presentations. All the signatures on documents. All the research assistance she'd provided for free because they were partners, because they were married, because she loved him. "You threw me out with nothing," Simone said quietly. "You didn't care where I'd sleep or how I'd survive. You told me not to fight you because I'd embarrass myself. So no, Trevor. I'm not giving you money. I'm not helping you. I'm moving forward with my own life, and you're not part of it anymore. This is revenge. You're enjoying watching me suffer. I'm not watching you at all. I'm too busy building something real." She hung up before he could respond and blocked his number. Then she called Patricia. "Send Trevor's lawyer a formal response to his cease and desist letter. Make it clear, I fulfilled my professional obligations. His company's failure to maintain regulatory compliance isn't my responsibility. And if he continues to harass me or my company, we'll pursue legal action for defamation and interference with business operations." "Consider it done," Patricia said. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly? Free. For the first time in years, I feel completely free." The next day, Simone signed the partnership agreement with Vitatech. $50 million hit her company's bank account by the end of the week. She used it to hire 10 more researchers, rent a proper facility with state-of-the-art equipment, and begin planning comprehensive clinical trials. News of the partnership spread through the biotech community. Simone started getting interview requests from journals and industry publications. Everyone wanted to know about the mysterious Dr. Winters who'd emerged from nowhere with groundbreaking technology. She did a few interviews, always careful to focus on her research rather than her personal life. But word got out anyway. Someone found out about her connection to Trevor Grant. Suddenly, articles were appearing with headlines like "From Ex-Wife to CO," "How Dr. Winters Built Her Own Biotech Empire," and "The Woman Behind Grant Biotech's Collapse Tells Her Story." Simone didn't read them. She didn't need to. She knew her own story, and it wasn't about Trevor or revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about a woman who'd been thrown away and chose to build something new instead of trying to reclaim what was lost. That was the story that mattered. Trevor Grant stood in the driveway of his mansion watching the auction company tag his possessions. The Porsche he'd never driven. The furniture Amber had picked out. The art collection he'd bought to impress people at dinner parties. Everything had a bright orange sticker with a lot number. "This way, sir," the bank representative said, not unkindly. "You'll need to vacate the premises by 5 p.m. Trevor nodded numbly. He'd run out a fight 3 days ago when the judge denied his emergency motion to stop the asset seizure. The creditors had won. They were taking everything. His lawyer stood nearby, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Grant, we need to discuss the fraud investigation." What fraud investigation? The SEC received complaints about Grant Biotech's regulatory status. They're investigating whether you knowingly misrepresented your company's compliance when seeking investors. If they find evidence of intentional fraud. I didn't do anything intentional. I didn't know about Dr. Winters being my wife. I understand, but ignorance isn't always a defense. You signed documents claiming all regulatory approvals were in good standing. Those approvals depended on Dr. Winters' continued support, which you lost when you divorced her. The SEC will argue you should have disclosed the change in circumstances. Trevor sat down hard on his front steps. 3 months ago he'd been on top of the world. The biotech industry's rising star. The man who'd turned a startup into a $500 million success story. Now he was under investigation for fraud, being evicted from his own home, and facing personal bankruptcy. What's the worst-case scenario? He asked. The lawyer hesitated. Criminal charges. Fines. Possible prison time. And you'll be barred from serving as an officer or director of any public company for at least 10 years. Prison. Trevor had never imagined his life would come to this. What about the company? He asked. Grant Biotech itself? The board removed you as CEO last week. They're trying to find new investors to keep the company afloat, but it's not looking good. Without the Medicorp acquisition, without Dr. Winters' regulatory support, the company's core technology is compromised. Most employees have already left for other opportunities. Including Brandon, who'd taken a position at a competitor. Including every member of Trevor's executive team. The ship was sinking and everyone who could was jumping off. Trevor's phone buzzed. Another creditor. He didn't answer. By 6 p.m. he was sitting in a small efficiency apartment across town, the kind of place he'd never imagined living. 1 room. A kitchenette. A bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. His possessions fit in 3 suitcases, the same number Simone had left with when he'd kicked her out. The irony wasn't lost on him. His phone rang again. This time it was his mother. Trevor, I just heard. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. The news says you're under investigation. They're saying you committed fraud. I didn't commit fraud. I just didn't pay attention to important details. That doesn't sound like you. You've always been so careful with business. Eddie? Trevor thought back over the past few years. He'd been so focused on the big picture, the deal, the money, the success, that he'd ignored the foundations everything was built on. He'd used Simone's credentials without acknowledging their importance. He'd signed documents without fully understanding what they meant. He'd assumed everything would work out because it always had before. He'd been arrogant. And that arrogance had destroyed everything. Mom, I need to go. I'll call you later. He hung up and stared at the bare walls of his new apartment. Somewhere across the city, Simone was probably in her lab, working on groundbreaking research, building a company that was actually hers. She'd lost everything the same way he was losing it now, but she'd responded by creating something new instead of scrambling to hold on to the past. Trevor pulled out his laptop and searched for news about Winters Biotech. Articles popped up everywhere. Dr. Simone Winters was apparently the hottest name in biotech right now. Her partnership with Vitatech was being called innovative and forward-thinking. Industry experts were predicting her technology could revolutionize patient care within 5 years. One article included a quote from her. Success isn't about holding on to what you have. It's about building something that matters and being willing to start over when necessary. Trevor closed the laptop. He knew that quote was about him, even if Simone hadn't said his name. She'd started over. She'd built something that mattered. While he'd been clinging desperately to a company built on her uncredited work, she'd been creating something genuine. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. Trevor declared personal bankruptcy. He testified before the SEC, explaining over and over that he genuinely hadn't known Dr. Winters was his ex-wife, genuinely hadn't understood the connection. They didn't press criminal charges, but the fines were substantial. And the ban from serving in corporate leadership was permanent. Grant Biotech officially closed its doors 4 months after the Medicorp deal fell apart. The technology was sold off in pieces to various competitors. Trevor received nothing from the sale. Every dollar went to creditors and settlements. On the day the company officially dissolved, Trevor got a job as a sales associate at a medical supply company. It was entry-level, barely above minimum wage. But it was work and he needed work. His first day on the job, he ran into someone he knew from his old life. A researcher who'd worked with him briefly. Trevor Grant, the man said, surprised. I heard about Grant Biotech. Tough break. Yeah, Trevor said. Things didn't work out. At least Dr. Winters is doing well. I read about her board position at Vitatech. Pretty impressive for someone who just started her company. Trevor forced a smile. She's very talented. Were you two connected somehow? I thought I read that you were married or something. We were. A long time ago. The researcher nodded sympathetically. Must be hard watching your ex succeed while you're, well, starting over. She earned her success, Trevor said. And he meant it. I just wish I'd recognized that while we were together. That evening, Trevor sat in his efficiency apartment and wrote a letter. Not to Simone, she'd made it clear she wanted nothing to do with him. But to himself. A list of everything he'd done wrong, everything he'd taken for granted, every mistake that had led him here. The list was long. At the top, he wrote, I built my success on someone else's foundation and thought it made me special. I threw away the person who made everything possible and thought I could succeed alone. I confused my wife's support with my own talent and paid the price for that confusion. Trevor folded the letter and put it in his desk drawer. He'd never send it anywhere. But writing it helped him understand how completely he'd failed. Not just in business, in life. He'd had a brilliant, accomplished, supportive partner, and he treated her like a background prop in his own success story. Now she was the star of her own story, and he was a cautionary tale about hubris and short-sightedness. The next morning, Trevor went to work at his new job. He answered phones, processed orders, and did all the small tasks he'd once had assistants handle. It was humbling. It was difficult. But it was honest work, and for the first time in years, Trevor wasn't building his life on someone else's foundation. He was starting from scratch just like Simone had. The difference was she'd done it with grace and integrity, while he'd done it because he had no other choice. 6 months after being thrown out in the rain, Simone stood in front of her team in Winters Biotech's new facility. The space was 10 times larger than their first cramped office, with proper labs, testing areas, and room to grow. 25 employees now, all brilliant, all dedicated, all invested in the company's success. Our first clinical trial results are in, Simone announced. She pulled up data on the big screen. 97% accuracy in multimetric monitoring. Battery life exceeding projections by 40%. 0 adverse reactions in test subjects. The room erupted in applause. Michelle and Andrew high-fived. Rachel wiped tears from her eyes. This was what they'd been working toward, proof that their technology actually worked. Vitatech is thrilled, Simone continued. They're fast-tracking phase 2 trials. If those results hold, we could have FDA approval within 18 months. James raised his hand. What does this mean for the company? It means we're hiring. We need to triple our team to handle the expanded trials. It means bigger facilities, more resources. And it means everyone in this room who took a chance on a brand new company 6 months ago is about to be rewarded for that faith. More applause. More celebration. Simone watched her team with deep satisfaction. This was what success felt like. Not the empty glamour of Trevor's lifestyle, but the genuine accomplishment of building something meaningful with people who shared your vision. That afternoon, Patricia called with more news. You've been invited to speak at the International Biotech Conference next month. Keynote address. It's one of the biggest events in the industry. Me? Keynote. You're the story everyone wants to hear, Simone. The researcher who struck out on her own and made it work. Plus, your technology is generating serious buzz. People want to know what's next. Simone agreed to the speaking engagement. Then she spent the next month preparing, working with her team to create a presentation that would showcase their work without revealing proprietary secrets. The night before the conference, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed in her new apartment, actually nice this time with real furniture and artwork on the walls, thinking about how far she'd come. From that rainy night to this moment. From homeless to CEO. From invisible to keynote speaker. The conference was held in a massive convention center. Thousands of researchers, executives, and industry leaders filled the halls. Simone registered and picked up her speaker badge, feeling surreal about the whole thing. She was sitting in the speaker-ready room when someone unexpected walked in. Dr. Winters? I'm Thomas Richardson. I'm speaking after you on the program. Thomas was a black man in his late 30s, tall and distinguished-looking with warm brown eyes and an easy smile. He wore a well-tailored suit and carried himself with the confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. Please call me Simone. What's your talk about? Biocompatible materials for long-term implants. Pretty niche stuff. Not nearly as exciting as your revolutionary monitoring technology. They talked for the next hour, first about their research, then about the industry, then about life in general. Thomas was a widower, Simone learned. His wife had died 3 years ago from complications of diabetes, the kind of complications that better monitoring might have prevented. That's why your work matters so much, Thomas said seriously. If devices like yours had existed 5 years ago, maybe the doctors would have caught Sarah's glucose instability sooner. Maybe she'd still be here. I'm sorry for your loss, Simone said. Thank you. It's why I do what I do now. Trying to make technology that helps people stay healthy longer. Prevents the kind of loss I experienced. They were called to the stage separately, but afterward, Thomas found Simone in the exhibition hall. Your presentation was incredible, he said. The way you explained the technology, the passion in your voice, you could feel everyone in that room wanting you to succeed. Thank you. Yours was excellent too. The material science was fascinating. Would you like to get coffee? Thomas asked. There's a place across the street. We could talk more about potential collaboration between our research areas. They ended up talking for 3 hours. About research, yes, but also about life. About loss and recovery. About starting over. About building something meaningful from broken pieces. You remind me of Sarah, Thomas said at one point. Not in looks or personality but in spirit. She was a researcher too. She always said science was about asking questions nobody else thought to ask. She sounds wonderful. She was. I think she would have liked you. They exchanged contact information before parting. Over the next month, they emailed back and forth about research questions, then about less professional topics. Thomas sent her articles he thought she'd find interesting. Simone shared funny stories from her lab. It wasn't dating. Neither of them called it that. But it was connection, and that was something Simone had been missing for years, even during her marriage to Trevor. Meanwhile, her company continued to grow. The Phase 2 trials were going well. VitaTech executives were dropping hints about a board position becoming available. 3 major hospitals had expressed interest in being early adopters of her technology once it received FDA approval. One evening, while working late at the lab, Simone received an email from someone unexpected, Trevor's mother. Dear Simone, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I wanted you to know how sorry I am for how Trevor treated you. I'm proud of everything you've accomplished. You were always brilliant, and I'm glad the world is finally recognizing that. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. With love, Margaret. Simone read the email 3 times, feeling unexpected tears. Margaret had always been kind to her during the marriage. Simone had lost touch with her after the divorce, assuming Trevor's mother would naturally take his side. She wrote back, "Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your kindness more than you know. I'm happy. I hope Trevor is finding his way forward too. All the best, Simone." She meant it. She genuinely hoped Trevor would figure out his life. Not because she forgave him or wanted to reconcile, but because holding on to anger took energy she'd rather spend on building her future. 2 months after the conference, Thomas invited Simone to dinner. A real dinner, not a coffee meeting or a professional lunch. A date. Simone almost said no. She'd spent 8 years in a marriage that had drained her. She wasn't sure she was ready for romance again. But Thomas wasn't Trevor. He saw her as an equal. He respected her work. He asked about her research not because he needed something, but because he genuinely cared about what she thought. So she said yes. They went to a small restaurant with good food and quiet atmosphere. They talked about everything and nothing. Thomas made her laugh. Simone found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. I should tell you something, Thomas said over dessert. I looked you up online. I know about your ex-husband and what happened. Simone's stomach tightened. Oh. I wanted you to know that I'm not interested in that story. I'm interested in you. The person you are now, the work you're doing, the life you're building. The past is the past. Thank you, Simone said quietly. That means a lot. Good. Because I'd like to see you again. If you're interested. She was interested. Very interested. Over the next months they dated casually. Thomas never pushed for more than Simone was ready to give. They went to museums, attended research seminars, cooked dinner together in his apartment or hers. It was easy. Comfortable. Built on mutual respect and genuine friendship. One night, lying on Thomas's couch watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures, Simone realized she was happy. Genuinely, completely happy. Not because she'd destroyed Trevor or gotten revenge, but because she'd built a life she actually wanted to live. What are you thinking? Thomas asked. I'm thinking about how different my life is now. A year ago, I was in a marriage where I felt invisible. I was supporting someone else's dreams instead of pursuing my own. I had no idea I'd end up here. Are you glad you did? Yes. It was terrifying and painful and I wouldn't want to go through it again. But yes, I'm glad. I'm more myself now than I've ever been. Thomas kissed her forehead. Good. You deserve to be yourself. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you ended up here too. Simone's phone buzzed with an email notification. She almost ignored it, then saw it was from Vitateca's board. Oh my God, she said, sitting up. What? They're offering me a full board position. Not just advisory. A real seat on Vitateca's board of directors. I'd have voting rights on all major company decisions. Thomas pulled her into a hug. That's amazing. Do you want to do it? I don't know. It's a huge commitment. But it's also incredible recognition. Most researchers never get offered this kind of influence. Then accept it. You've earned this, Simone. Take it and use it to make the changes you want to see in the industry. She accepted the position the next morning. When her team heard, they threw an impromptu celebration party in the lab. Someone brought champagne again, better quality this time. Someone else ordered cake. Rachel pulled Simone aside during the celebration. You did it? You really did it. We did it, Simone corrected. This company exists because all of you believed in it. No, you built this. We're just helping. A year ago you had nothing. Now you're on the board of one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. That's not luck. That's you. Simone looked around at her team, her company, her future. Rachel was right. She built this. Not through revenge or sabotage, but through hard work, integrity, and refusing to give up when everything seemed lost. That was real success. Not the kind measured in millions of dollars or mansion square footage. But the kind measured in meaningful work, genuine relationships, and the satisfaction of creating something that mattered. Trevor had thrown her away thinking she was worthless. He'd been wrong about that, just like he'd been wrong about so many things. Simone Winters was worth everything. And now the whole world knew it. The annual Research Excellence Award ceremony was held at a prestigious hotel ballroom, with crystal chandeliers and tables draped in white linen. Simone sat at a table near the front with her team, wearing a midnight blue gown that made her feel elegant and powerful. Thomas sat beside her, looking handsome in his tuxedo. He squeezed her hand as the award ceremony began. Nervous? He asked quietly. A little, Simone admitted. She'd been nominated for the Innovation Award, recognizing groundbreaking research with commercial potential. She hadn't expected to win. The category included researchers from major universities and established companies. But then her name was called. The Innovation Award goes to Dr. Simone Winters of Winters Biotech, for her development of multimetric biosensor technology that promises to revolutionize continuous health monitoring. Rachel and Michelle were practically pushing her out of her seat. James whistled. The entire table erupted in applause. Simone walked to the stage on shaking legs. The award was a crystal sculpture, heavy and cool in her hands. She looked out at the audience of researchers, executives, and industry leaders. A year ago, she'd been nobody to these people. Now they were on their feet applauding her work. Thank you, she said into the microphone. Her voice echoed through the ballroom. A year ago, I started Winters Biotech with nothing but an idea and determination. I want to thank Vitatech Corporation for believing in that idea. I want to thank my team for turning it into reality. And I want to thank everyone who supported me when I needed it most. She thought about Patricia, who'd helped her when she had nowhere else to turn. About Dr. Wu, who'd recognized her integrity. About Thomas, who'd reminded her what genuine partnership looked like. This award comes with a $5 million research grant, Simone continued. We'll use that money to accelerate our clinical trials and bring this technology to patients who need it. Because at the end of the day, research isn't about awards or recognition. It's about making a difference in people's lives. Thank you. The applause was thunderous. Simone walked off stage, award in hand, feeling like she was floating. Back at the table, her team was celebrating wildly. $5 million. Andrew kept repeating. We can do the full trial program now. Thomas pulled her aside as dessert was served. I'm proud of you. Thank you for being here. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. He paused, then added carefully, Simone, I know we've been taking things slow. But I need you to know, this is real for me. Whatever this is between us, it matters to me. Simone looked at him, this kind man who'd entered her life at exactly the right moment. Not to rescue her, she'd rescued herself. But to walk beside her as an equal partner in building a future. It's real for me too, she said. And it scares me because the last time I trusted someone with my heart, it ended badly. But you're not Trevor. This isn't that relationship. And I'm not the same person I was then. No, you're not. You're stronger. More sure of yourself. More willing to fight for what you want. I want this, Simone said firmly. I want us. I'm ready to stop being scared and start building something real. Thomas kissed her, right there in the ballroom with 500 people around them. When they pulled apart, he was grinning. Good. Because I was planning to ask you to move in with me, and I'd have looked pretty foolish if you weren't interested. Simone laughed, surprised and delighted. You want me to move in? I want a lot of things. But let's start there. They sealed the decision with another kiss. Later that night, after the ceremony ended, Simone stood outside the hotel waiting for their car. The city sparkled around her, full of light and life and possibility. Her phone buzzed. A news alert from a business website. She almost didn't look, but the headline caught her eye. Grant Biotech founder Trevor Grant settles fraud investigation, agrees to permanent ban from corporate leadership. Simone read the article quickly. Trevor had settled with the SEC. No prison time but substantial fines and the permanent leadership ban. He was working in sales now, the article said. Living in a small apartment. Trying to rebuild his life from scratch. She felt neither satisfaction nor pity. Just a distant acknowledgement that this chapter of her life was finally, completely closed. Everything okay? Thomas asked, coming up beside her. Everything's perfect, Simone said, putting her phone away. Trevor's story ended. Mine's just beginning. The car arrived and they drove back to Thomas's apartment, soon to be their apartment. Simone looked out at the city lights, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. A year ago, she'd stood in the rain with nothing. Trevor had thrown her out, confident in his victory. He'd celebrated his success inside the mansion they'd shared, never imagining she could threaten it. But Trevor had misunderstood success itself. He'd thought it was about money and status and deals. He'd built his empire on foundations that weren't his, then wondered why it collapsed when those foundations were removed. Simone had learned a different lesson. Success wasn't about what you took or who you used. It was about what you built with your own hands, your own mind, your own integrity. It was about creating something that mattered and being willing to start over when necessary. Trevor's $500 million deal had been built on her signatures, her credentials, her uncredited work. When he'd thrown her away, he'd lost the foundation of everything he'd built. He'd never understood that she wasn't just support staff in his success story. She was the author of her own narrative. And she'd written herself a much better ending than anything Trevor had imagined. 1 year, 1 month, and 3 days after being evicted from her own home, Simone Winters stood on the balcony of her new apartment with Thomas beside her. Below, the city hummed with energy. Somewhere out there, her lab was running experiments. Her team was advancing research. Patients were waiting for technology that would change their lives. What are you thinking about? Thomas asked. I'm thinking about revenge, Simone said. How I thought I wanted it, but what I really wanted was justice. And how the best revenge turned out to be no revenge at all. Just building a life I actually wanted to live. Is this the life you wanted? Simone looked at him, then at the city, then at her reflection in the glass door. She saw a woman who was confident, accomplished, and genuinely happy. A woman who'd survived the worst and come out stronger. Yes, she said. This is exactly the life I wanted. I just didn't know it until I was forced to start over. Thomas wrapped his arms around her. Good. Because I'm planning to be part of this life for a very long time. How long? How about forever? Simone turned to face him, surprised. Thomas Richardson, is that a proposal? Not yet. But it's a promise. When I do propose, and I will, you'll know it's because I see you exactly as you are. Brilliant, strong, incredible. Not as someone's ex-wife or someone's support system. As Simone Winters. The woman who built something amazing from nothing. That woman says yes, Simone whispered. To all of it. To this life, to us, to whatever comes next. They kissed as the city sparkled below them. Somewhere across town, Trevor Grant sat in his efficiency apartment, alone with his regrets. He'd thrown away something precious because he'd failed to see its value. He'd lost everything because he'd taken the most important person in his life for granted. But that was his story now. His lesson to learn. His consequences to face. Simone's story was different. She'd been thrown away and had transformed that rejection into opportunity. She'd taken the anger and pain and fear and used them as fuel to build something better than anything she'd lost. Trevor had signed a $500 million deal without knowing his wife had signed the papers that made it possible. That ignorance had cost him everything. Simone had signed those same papers knowing exactly what they meant. And when the opportunity came to use that knowledge as a weapon, she'd chosen instead to use it as a foundation for her own success. That was the difference between revenge and victory. Revenge was about destruction. Victory was about creation. And Dr. Simone Winters had created something beautiful from the ashes of her old life. A company, a career, a future. A love built on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. She'd started with nothing and built everything. That was the